successful two-way communication between the performance satellite and the ground station in Daejeon, meaning the homegrown space rocket satellite orbit deployment capability is validated. South Korea reports its first monkeypox case. The Korean citizen returned home on Tuesday after traveling to Germany. A powerful earthquake hit the eastern part of Afghanistan. The 5.9 tremor reportedly caused 1,000 deaths and injured 1,500 others. Hello, it's good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. Authorities confirmed that two-way communication was made between the performance satellite Nuri was carrying and the ground station in Daejeon, fully confirming the country's satellite orbit deployment capability. Jo Sang-min starts us off.
Success in launching an entirely domestically developed space rocket. Success in placing satellites into orbit after reaching the target altitude of 700 kilometers. And another success confirmed on Wednesday early morning. Two-way communication has been established between the performance verification satellite and the ground station in Daejeon.
On the very day of the launch, we received basic information on the performance verification satellite's condition via King Sejong Station in Antarctica and the Korea Aerospace Research Institute's ground station in Daejeon. On Wednesday early morning, two-way communication was made, completely confirming Nuri's capacity of putting a satellite into orbit.
With two-way communication successfully made at around 3 a.m. on Wednesday morning, South Korea has fully confirmed its capability to deploy self-powered satellites using homegrown space rockets. During the communication, engineers on the ground sent a command for the satellite to sync its clock with that of the ground station and to activate the GPS transmitter. After a one-week monitoring period, 4 mini-cube satellites will be released one by one.
We'll monitor the satellite for 7 days and stabilize its position. After that, starting June 29th, we'll release each cube satellite made by domestic universities one by one, each 2 days apart.
The performance verification satellite has its own camera, which will film the cube satellite's detaching process. That visual data will then be transmitted to the ground station. Jo Sang-min, Arirang News.
President Yoon Sung-il pledged to revive the local nuclear power industry as a source of clean energy and economic growth. First step involves supporting companies impacted by the previous administration's nuclear phase-out policy. The government will also help them enter the global market. Lee Young-eun has the details.
On Wednesday, President Yoon Sung-il inspected a factory run by Doosan Enerbility, South Korea's only factory that makes the main components of nuclear reactors. There in Changwon, South Korea's hub for nuclear power, he underscored his commitment to reversing the nuclear phase-out policy put in place in 2017 under the previous administration.
우리 원전은 세계 최고 수준의 기술력과 또 안전성을 인정받고 있습니다. 더 키워나가야 될 이 원전 산업이 지금 수년간 어려움에 직면해 있어서 매우 안타깝고 지금이라도 바로 잡아야 할 것입니다.
Highlighting the ability of domestic companies to complete projects on time and on budget, the president expressed hope for South Korea to lead the global market.
지금 세계는 이 원전 수출 시장의 문이 활짝 열려 있습니다. 만일 우리가 지난 5년 동안 바보 같은 짓을 안 하고 이 원전 생태계를 더욱 탄탄히 구축했더라면은 지금 아마 경쟁자가 전혀 없었을 것이라고 저는 확신합니다.
To make that a reality, the president vowed to get the industry back on track first by helping companies stripped of contracts due to the nuclear phase-out initiative. The plan is to immediately place orders worth some $70 million. They will include resuming the construction at the Shinano nuclear reactors, units 3 and 4. Then increasing the total amount of orders to some $770 million by 2025. The government will also provide assistance for R&D and help for small and mid-sized companies looking to grow. In the meantime, it will also serve as an active global salesperson. The government will first try winning deals in countries like the Czech Republic and Poland, which Industry Minister Lee Chang-yang himself will soon be visiting. The ultimate goal is to export 10 nuclear reactors by 2030. A special public-private partnership will be launched next month and put in charge of related affairs. 이경은, Arirang News.
Analysts predict global semiconductor prices could fall in the coming months. The projection is based on a slowdown in economic growth, meaning less demand for electronics. Kim Hyun-sung provides a deeper analysis.
Semiconductor prices could slip later this year. This is bad news for South Korea's chip makers like Samsung and SK Hynix, because a dip in chip prices signals dampened demand among consumers. Market research company TrendForce forecasts that some of the semiconductors that goes into smartphones and PCs may see prices fall up to 8% year-on-year in the third quarter. NAND flash, a data storing semiconductor, is to fall by up to 5%. And DRAM, used for short-term memory storage, could fall up to 8% later this year. Soaring prices and sluggish economic growth held back by Russia's invasion of Ukraine have hurt demand for new electronic goods.
If economic growth slows, consumption slows, which in turn will cut down production. Lower production means lower demand, also for semiconductors.
Also, with China's rigid COVID curbs hurting logistics and consumer spending, Chinese brand smartphones have been slower than usual to leave the shelves. According to industry analysis firm Counterpoint, global smartphone shipments are expected to fall by 3% this year compared to last year. This may be a sign of a bigger economic trend, according to one expert.
I said a recession will start from next year, but it seems like it's starting a little faster than expected. Recession signs are already showing up in the semiconductor prices.
Although recession remains a risk, it may be too early to say, because demand can bounce back after a short drop, according to another expert.
Nobody knows if this price drop will continue or if it will be temporary. Chip demand comes in a cycle. It increases, then decreases. But if there's a recession, demand will be slow to recover.
But some do see a silver lining. The semiconductor supply pinch may be eased as demand recedes. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea and Japan agreed to resume flights between Gimpo Airport in Seoul and Haneda in Tokyo. According to the Transport Ministry, services will begin again from June 29th. The suspension lasted more than 2 years due to the pandemic. There will be 8 flights a week, 2 each on Korean Air, Asian Airlines, Japan Airlines, and ANA. At the start of the Yoon administration, the two governments agreed resuming flights would be a priority in the process of rebuilding ties. Among 2 suspected monkeypox cases, a Korean citizen who arrived in the country on Tuesday tested positive. Authorities raised the monkeypox risk level from attention to caution. Lee Dae-hyun brings the updates.
South Korea is no longer a safe haven from monkeypox. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency confirmed the country's first case of monkeypox on Wednesday. It said there were 2 suspected cases, 1 Korean citizen and a foreign national. The Korean citizen tested positive after showing symptoms such as fever, sore throat, and fatigue upon entering the country from Germany on Tuesday afternoon at around 4 p.m. It has been reported that the person also suffered headaches 3 days before arrival and are currently receiving treatment at Incheon Medical Center west of Seoul. Meanwhile, another suspected case was a foreign national who entered the country on Monday. Symptoms such as a sore throat and skin lesion has begun to show the day before. The foreign national, however, tested negative. South Korea has now raised the monkeypox risk level from attention to the second level, caution, which requires confirmed cases to go into self-isolation. Authorities also mentioned plans for antiviral medications.
There are plans to import the antiviral drug tecovirimat for 500 people in mid-July, but until then, any medication available for treatment will be distributed.
President Yoon has called for strict quarantine measures for overseas arrivals and ordered health authorities to secure a swift supply of vaccines and antiviral drugs. With monkeypox spreading around the World Health Organization plans to hold an emergency meeting on Thursday to determine whether monkeypox is an emergency of international concern. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
And I'm not sure if Dr. Easterbrook is on the line, but...
Next week, President Yoon will attend a NATO summit to bolster solidarity and discuss North Korea's nuclear issue. A trilateral summit between leaders of Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo are expected to take place, but a bilateral session with its Japanese counterpart seems less likely. Yoon Jung-min reports.
South Korea will establish a diplomatic mission to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in Brussels in time for President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to Madrid next week to participate in the NATO summit. That's according to the president's national security advisor Kim Sung-han on Wednesday, where he also laid out what President Yoon aims to achieve at the multilateral summit as the very first South Korean head of state to attend a NATO meeting.
President Yoon will strengthen value-based solidarity rooted in liberal democracy with 30 NATO allies and partners at the NATO summit. We expect to garner broad support from the participants by making clear our stance on North Korea's nuclear and related issues at the summit.
South Korea is invited to the meeting this year as one of the 4 partners in the Asia-Pacific, along with Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. On the sidelines of the multilateral summit, President Yoon will likely hold a trilateral with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts Joe Biden and Fumio Kishida. Seoul's top office said coordination is currently underway for some 10 bilateral meetings, but hinted that a Yoon-Kishida one-on-one is less likely as ties between the two countries remain frosty over historical issues and as Japan has a House of Councilors elections coming up. At the multilateral, South Korea plans to establish a security network with NATO and boost its humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine will most likely top the multilateral summit table.
President Yoon will establish a comprehensive security network with NATO allies amid unpredictable international situations, such as the Ukraine crisis. As South Korea is not a member of the NATO, we seek a comprehensive security cooperation with NATO, not a collective defense.
It's in line with this goal that Seoul plans to open a mission to NATO for more active communication, cooperation on nuclear energy and chips, as well as coordination on emerging security challenges in cyberspace, aerospace, climate change, and more. President Yoon Suk-yeol plans to take his debut on the multilateral summit stage to boost the nation's diplomatic ties with other countries that share common values and up its contribution in the international arena. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Emerging security threats facing the world include infectious diseases and technology misuse. To raise awareness about these issues as well as to strengthen global cooperation and governance, South Korea is hosting the World Emerging Security Forum. Kim Da-mi takes us to the scene.
From the COVID-19 pandemic and its evolving variants to prominent cyber attacks amid the crisis in Ukraine, these hurdles could be just a taste of the emerging security threats that the world is facing. South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin said this at the 2022 World Emerging Security Forum in Seoul on Tuesday. There, he emphasized how countries should cooperate to overcome global risks.
It is in this context that the Korean government launched this forum. As a multi-stakeholder platform, it aims to raise international awareness on the emerging security threats and, in turn, facilitate effective partnerships to address these common challenges together.
Just like the theme of this year's forum, past, present, and future of emerging security threats, experts and scholars from around the world put their heads together in Seoul and laid out common global threats, including the cyber attacks detected in Ukraine, both before and following Russia's invasion of the country. In fact, one expert warned that such attacks are evidence of a different kind of warfare.
So I think that should make us look back on some of the prognostications that have been advanced over the years with some skepticism about how cyber warfare can provide a real advantage to the offense because it opens up opportunities for new attacks at a minimal cost because the attacker doesn't have to take the risk of sending in armed men.
But experts also pointed out the world already has the resources and technology and capacity to respond effectively to such security threats, namely partnerships between government and the private sector.
To do this. Now, we've seen the private sector be incredibly effective even in the Ukraine in terms of things that for instance, Google has done about taking down some of its mapping services, things that Microsoft and other parties have done to work with the Ukrainians to help them with cybersecurity.
The cyber expert added governments and private bodies need to shield up and build on important milestones, citing examples of different partners coming together, such as the development of COVID-19 vaccines in record time. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
After a string of mass shootings this year, the U.S. Senate reached an agreement on a bipartisan gun control bill, a move that could end up being the most significant change to related American legislation in decades. Jung Eun-ji explains further.
The U.S. Senate took the initial step on Tuesday to advance a newly finalized bipartisan gun safety bill. The 80-page package, titled the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, was prompted in particular by two horrific mass shootings in Texas and New York. If passed, the bill would be the most significant gun control law in 29 years since the now-expired assault rifle ban in 1993. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said he expects the bill to pass this week, while Senator Chris Murphy, the lead Democrat bargainer, highlighted its significance.
I believe that this week we will pass legislation that will become the most significant piece of anti-gun violence legislation Congress will have passed in 30 years. This is a breakthrough. And more importantly, it's a bipartisan breakthrough.
The legislation would toughen background checks for gun buyers between the ages of 18 and 21. It also includes provisions that would help states keep guns out of the hands of those deemed to be a danger to themselves or others, and creates new federal statutes against gun trafficking. The bill also closes the so-called boyfriend loophole by blocking gun sales to those convicted of abusing intimate partners they're not married to. Gun ownership is already banned for convicted abusers who are married to, live with, or have had children with their victims. The legislation would further increase funding for states and communities to improve school safety and for mental health initiatives. Aides estimated the measure would cost around $15 billion. This bill, however, does not include proposals that Democrats, including President Joe Biden, have been unsuccessfully pushing for years, which include banning assault-type weapons or requiring background checks for virtually all gun sales. The measure still has a number of hurdles to clear. In the Senate, the legislation will first need to break a filibuster, which requires 60 votes to advance and means that at least 10 Republicans will need to join Democrats in support. The bill would go on to a final vote if senators can successfully break a filibuster, and the bill would need to be taken up by the House. Jung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, powerful earthquake has hit the eastern part of Afghanistan, taking lives and injuring many others. Our Kim Bo-kyung is standing by on the line with the latest. Bo-kyung, do fill us in.
Well, Daniel, at 1:24 a.m. on Wednesday local time, a massive earthquake hit the eastern part of Afghanistan. It swept the province of Paktika province near the border with Pakistan. The magnitude of the earthquake is 5.9, according to the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, who revised its initial estimate of 6.1. According to the latest figures from the Bakhtar news agency, the quake has led to around 1,000 deaths and has left around 1,500 injured. Unfortunately, the number of deaths and injuries is expected to rise as more information trickles through from those at the site. The epicenter of the tremor was about 37 kilometers from the city of Khost, a city near the Pakistani border. Though only 10 kilometers in depth, the quake was strong enough to be felt across the country, including the capital, Kabul. Authorities have launched a rescue operation with helicopters being used to reach the injured.
It was about midnight when the quake struck. It destroyed our neighbors' houses. When we got there, many were dead or wounded. They sent us to the hospital. I also saw many dead bodies.
So, Bo-kyung, we hear around 1,000 have reportedly died, but specific numbers by various media outlets seem to differ. Why is that so, and how are Afghan authorities handling the crisis?
Well, Daniel, like you said, the exact number is hard to determine as there are lots of regions where the Taliban's administration does not reach, and many global media outlets have left the country following the Taliban's takeover last year. Interior Ministry official Salahuddin Ayyubi also added that it would take some time to collect more details as some of the villages are in remote areas in the mountains. Meanwhile, the supreme leader of the ruling Taliban has offered his condolences through a statement, while the deputy minister for disaster management said the government will be giving out relief funds.
Based on the orders of the Prime Minister, it's being decided that 100,000 Afghani will be given to the families of people who've died, and 50,000 will be given to those who've suffered injuries as urgent support.
A spokesman of Afghanistan's foreign ministry said it would welcome international help too. That's all from me for now. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Bo-kyung, thank you for those updates. Moving on to other stories now. Flying a fighter jet requires extremely specialized and intense training. Some of the most challenging phases for pilots include preparing the body for intense G-force and lack of oxygen. Bae-eun-ji went through some of the grueling steps to sample what the aces in the sky endure every day.
At the Special Training Center in South Korea, pilots in the military receive a special type of training to cope with huge centrifugal forces while flying at high speeds. To find out what this actually feels like, I went through high-G training. In order to pass this test, I need to withstand 6 times the force of gravity for 20 seconds inside this cockpit. Let's see if I can pass the test and not pass out. I made it through the warm-up where I was put through 4G, or 4 times the force of gravity. The force was raised gradually at 0.1 G per second while I practiced a special type of breathing technique they taught us. But during the actual test, the force was raised by 1 G per second all the way up to 6 G. I lasted for just 2 seconds before losing consciousness. This is because the extra force caused blood to rush to my feet, and my heart couldn't pump hard enough to bring this heavier blood to the brain. At the training center, I also went through ejection training, aimed at preventing serious injury when pilots are ejected from a fighter jet. Pilots learn how to position themselves before pulling the handle. This is essential for survival, as the ejection process subjects pilots to forces as much as 20 times that of gravity. Fighter pilots also go through hypoxia training, where they learn how to withstand low oxygen environments while flying at high altitudes. During the training, we first breathed in 100% oxygen for 15 minutes, before the simulation chamber reached 25,000 feet. We took off our masks for about 3 minutes and tried to solve simple math problems. After about a minute, I felt very dizzy, like many other people sitting next to me. And it became extremely difficult to work through those simple problems because of mental confusion caused by a lack of oxygen. Pilots are required to go through all of these training exercises regularly.
All pilots in our Air Force are trained every 3 years at this training center. This regular training can help prevent accidents that can occur during an actual flight.
배은지, 아리랑 뉴스, 청주.
A weather pattern of heavy rain and heat wave will alternate for the next few days. Torrential downpours are expected tomorrow as a monsoonal weather system will enter the country. This weather system will be strong enough to cause thunder and lightning. And after the rain, heat wave conditions will make a return. And by early next week, another round of heavy showers are in the forecast. Tomorrow's monsoon rain will contain heavy moisture, causing some soaking rain in a short period of time. Northern Gyeonggi-do, Jeollado provinces and Jeju Island will see up to 120 millimeters of rainfall. Parts of central regions, including the capital, will see 30 to 100 millimeters. Keep in mind that some regions will see locally heavy downpours of 30 to 50 millimeters per hour. And morning lows in Seoul and Gwangju will be kicking off at 23 degrees Celsius. Daily highs in Seoul and Busan will reach 25 degrees, Daegu 31, Gwangju will reach 28 degrees. And this weekend, partly cloudy skies are in the forecast for the capital region. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
It's time to wrap things up. As always, thank you for staying with us.